Part 2, Why You Think You Can't Meditate. Chapter 3, I don't have time. But Russell, I just don't have the time to meditate. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. I'm always getting approached by people looking for advice on how to get ahead, but when I simply say, start meditating, they act like I just tried to duck the question. Come on, Russell, I don't have time for all of that, they'll say in protest. Give me something real. But I couldn't be more real with someone looking to improve their life than to tell them to meditate. So when they claim they don't have time, I always come back at them with that old saying about meditation. If you don't have 20 minutes to delve into yourself through meditation, then that means you really need 2 hours. So if you're one of those people who claim that they would start meditating if they just have the time, my message to you is make the time. That's because while your mind is the part of your body you use the most, it's also probably the part you spend the least amount of time taking care of. Think about all the other parts of your life that you put real and sustained effort into maintaining. If you were like millions and millions of us, you put a lot of effort into keeping your body in shape. That's obvious. But we also put a lot of effort into maintaining our material possessions too. We take our shirts to the dry cleaners when they're dirty and shine our shoes when they're scuffed. We polish our jewelry, wash our cars obsessively, and try to keep our lawns freshly mowed. But how many hours do we spend trying to maintain our minds? In most cases, only the tiniest fraction in comparison. And in too many, virtually none at all. In fact, pull out a piece of paper and make a checklist right now. Get down this list, or go down this list and write down how many hours a week you dedicate to maintaining these essential parts of your life. Your appearance, working out, brushing teeth, combing hair, shaving, putting on makeup, etc. Your money, paying bills, following investments, planning for the future, etc. Your clothes, shopping, washing, folding, ironing, etc. Your home, cleaning, organizing, fixing, etc. Your toys, fixing your car, playing video games, tinkering with the fixtures in your kitchen, etc. In addition to being one of the most talented entertainers of our generation, a father, a husband, Hugh Jackman is also a meditator. So what does he have to say to those who claim they don't have time for meditation? Quote, everyone takes a shower every day and we don't complain about it. We do it out of discipline. There will always be an excuse not to meditate. The ego says, you don't need to meditate, man. You're really busy. What about the kids? But do I say, I can't shower today because I have to make time for the kids? Returning to the list. Add them up. Probably comes out to 20 to 30 hours a week, right? Now add up how much time you spend maintaining your mind. And remember, I'm not talking about using your mind. I'm talking about the time that you dedicate to specifically relaxing and strengthening your mind. Not much, huh? Now let me ask you, have you ever felt, despite all the time you spend working out, cleaning up your house, balancing your checkbook, and organizing your paperwork, that your life is still always on the verge of falling apart? For all the effort you put into keeping things together, you're only a few inches from spiraling out of control. If the answer is yes, then you need to make the time to meditate every day. You're already working hard at having a productive, organized, and rewarding life. All I'm suggesting is you take some of that effort and direct it toward the place where you're really going to see an amazing return on your investment, your mind. Let's look at the type of investment I'm asking for. Meditating twice a day for 20 minutes equals about 4.5 hours a week. That's about 1/8 of what you're spending on all those other aspects of your life. I'm not saying stop brushing your teeth or paying your bills, but I know that when you don't get to the gym for a few days and start to feel sluggish and a little soft around the middle, you'll probably make it a priority to get to the gym the next morning. Or if you let the dishes pile up in your sink for a few days, you tell yourself, I have to clean this up tomorrow morning. This is disgusting. Well, you have to make meditation a similar priority in your life. That doesn't mean giving up going to the gym or going for a run or even watching TV in order to meditate. It just means that the same way you know you're not going to be happy if you don't make the time to work out or clean up your sink, you have to make the time to fit those 40 minutes into your routine too. But here's the thing. Once you start making that commitment, your crazy, hectic schedule isn't going to feel quite as hectic anymore. You're going to start feeling more balanced and less stressed out. The little things in life that always seem to get you bent out of shape will become minor annoyances that you'll just shrug off. Instead of feeling like life is flying by you in a blur, you'll find yourself slowing down and being able to appreciate and enjoy all the beautiful things around you, to stop and smell the proverbial flowers. I promise you that after a few months of consistent practice, instead of thinking, man, how am I going to find the time to meditate today? It's going to be a given that you're going to meditate. You might wonder how you'll find the time to fit in some other activities into your day. Meditating is always going to be at the top of your priority list. I want you to consider this quote about finding the time to meditate from Ray Dalio, who runs Bridgewater Associates, one of the biggest investment funds in the world. Ray is an incredible innovator. He's been called the Steve Jobs of investing and is personally responsible for billions of dollars in investment funds and hundreds of employees. If this guy isn't busy, then no one is. Yet every day, twice a day, Ray sits down and meditates for 20 minutes. So when an interviewer from Georgetown University's Center for Meditation and Interreligious Dialogue asked him what he had to say to people who claimed they were too busy to meditate, this was his reply. It's 20 minutes in the morning, it's 20 minutes in the evening. And that's a challenging thing. It's the biggest reason that people leave it. But people who actually invest in it, experience it, and do it for more than 6 months, never stop doing it. And the reasons are, not only does it feel terrific at the time, but they carry it with them through the day. And it's really such an unbelievable investment. So when you're thinking about the 20 minutes you're putting in the morning and the evening, and then you say, how much did that change the effectiveness of my whole day and the enjoyment of my whole day? It's such a radical payback that you want to do it. Ray really nailed it with that quote. Yes, finding 20 minutes twice a day is going to be a challenge at first. But once you face that challenge and start the practice, meditation is going to transition from something you feel like you have to do to something you want to do. You just have to get started. And in this book, I'm going to show you how. Chapter 4, I'm no good at it. Another misconception that trips some people up is the belief that they're not good at meditating. These people make the effort to sit down and meditate, but then don't stick with the practice because they feel like they're doing it wrong, or somehow aren't having the same experience that real meditators do. Maybe you're one of those people. Maybe you've tried to meditate before, but after a few minutes of sitting in silence, you felt like it wasn't working and then gave up. If you fit that description, I want you to understand the way you experience this was very natural. In fact, it was what many people experience when they first start meditating. But instead of giving up the practice, after reading this book, I want you to go back and try it again. Because no matter who you are or how you felt the first few times you tried it, you do have the potential to be a great meditator. If meditation were basketball, every single one of us would have Michael Jordan's natural ability. It's not like some of us would be short and couldn't jump while others would be 6'6" and be able to fly through the air. We'd all be like Mike. It would just be a question of accessing that ability. The truth is, everyone is a great meditator, is great at meditation, because it's our natural state. Saying you're not good at meditating is like saying you're not good at breathing, or a fish saying that it's not good at swimming. It's impossible. For example, a few years ago, I went on Ellen DeGeneres' TV show, and we started talking about meditation. Ellen told me that she had always wanted to meditate, but had tried it a few times, and here comes the phrase again, wasn't very good at it. So I told Ellen to try transcendental meditation, a mantra-based technique that's very similar to the one I'm going to teach you later in the book. She went home and tried, and after a few sessions, she felt much more comfortable in the practice. Now Ellen meditates every day and credits it with giving her the focus she needs to keep her hectic life balanced. Ellen doesn't only have a talk show. She also runs a record label, does stand-up, and writes a blog and books of her own. She's got a lot on her plate. But when she went on the Today Show, she said she meditates every day, quote, because it feels good, she explained. Kind of like when you have to shut your computer down. Just sometimes when it goes crazy, you just shut it down. And when you turn it on, it's okay again. That's what meditation is for me. I'm so happy that Ellen gave meditation a second chance and now is doing so much to spread the word about the benefits of the practice. Hearing Ellen talk about her initial experience, I think what messed her up and messes up a lot of people was the belief that because she was still having thoughts after she sat down to meditate and closed her eyes, she was doing something wrong. I'm going to talk about the technique of dealing with your thoughts in much greater detail later on in this book. But for now, I do want to say this. Meditation does not mean the absence of thoughts. Meditation does not mean going into a trance. Meditation does not mean forgetting who or where you are. If you're worrying that you're not doing it right, because none of those things happen when you meditate, then please stop worrying, because you will have thoughts when you meditate. It's just that meditation allows you to have a different relationship with your thoughts than you usually have. Instead of being overwhelmed or controlled by your thoughts, you get to detach yourself from them so that you can stop making frantic emotional decisions about who you are and what you want to do with your life, and start choosing how you want to live in a controlled, peaceful, and contented manner. Trust me, every day when I sit down and meditate, I still have thoughts in my head, lots of them. I still think about issues I'm having at my office or drama I'm dealing with in my personal life, or even something that happened in a movie I watched the night before. It's just that instead of becoming entangled in those thoughts, the longer I sit there in silence and focus on my mantra, the less and less noise they seem to make in my mind. To the point where after I've been sitting for a few minutes, the thoughts might come into my mind, but then they leave just as quickly, which is when you start to experience a sense of peace and connectedness that is usually absent from your life. The sense of shutting down your computer that Ellen spoke of. But when Ellen used the phrase shutting down, she wasn't talking about turning off her mind. She was talking about turning off the noise of the world. It's a critical distinction. The first time you sit down and meditate, all your thoughts aren't going to go rushing out of your mind like air from an untied balloon. And that's fine. In fact, it's beautiful. Just be patient and have faith that as long as you stick with your mantra and commit to the process of meditation, eventually that peace will come into your life. Or as the great Japanese master, Katagiri Roshi, once put it, don't expect enlightenment, just sit down. Also, please don't think that you are either too young or too old to meditate. I taught my daughters meditation when they were both around 10, and they took to it like fish to water. Even a few years later, I'm sometimes surprised by how deep they're able to get into it. Conversely, I taught it to a close family friend of ours named Victor, who used to be married to Kimura's mother and as a grandfather figure to our girls, when he was in his 70s, and he took to it just as easily. Today, Victor meditates twice a day, every day, and credits it as one of the reasons he's able to bounce around with more energy than men half his age. But I do want to stress that while, like my daughters and Victor, you will see some positive effects from your meditation fairly rapidly, especially relating to your health and sense of well-being, meditation's true impact can take years, even decades to be felt. I recently watched a video of a speech that the Dalai Lama gave at Stanford University, in which he said that even after 60 years of meditating, he was still surprised at how the practice continued to change him. He said that he started meditating at 15 years old, but didn't become serious about it until he was in his late 20s and early 30s. And didn't truly begin to reach deeper levels of consciousness until he was in his 50s and 60s. When asked by someone in the crowd what he learned from meditating all those years, the Dalai Lama said, "There is one thing I can state definitely, with confidence. The mind can change through training, through awareness, that's for sure." I hope that what the Dalai Lama said really sinks in with you. The mind can change through training. So many people walk around saying, "My mind is too busy to meditate," or "I'm just not wired the right way for meditation." But the truth is you are not trapped in a certain relationship with your emotions or your thoughts. No matter who you are or what you've gone through, you are capable of finding this peace. You don't have to believe in your abilities as a meditator for it to work. You just have to take the time to do it. That's it. Chapter 5. I don't have anywhere to meditate. This is another excuse that a lot of people fall back on when I encourage them to meditate. And to be fair, for a lot of people, this is an issue. In a perfect world, everyone would have a quiet room in their home where they could get away from the noise and distractions, turn down the lights a little bit, and settle into those 20 minutes of silence. I won't lie. I have a room like that in my house, and it's a great place to meditate. But before you say, well, this isn't a perfect world, and I don't have a room like that in my house, Russell, the point is that this world is perfect. It's just that until you slow down and access the stillness inside of you, sometimes it's hard to see that perfection. So whether you have a mansion in Beverly Hills or live in a housing project in Harlem, remember that you are surrounded by perfect places to meditate. Some might seem better than others at first glance, but you could always find a good spot to sit in silence. And even though I might have gone Hollywood in the last year or so, remember, I spent most of my life in New York City, which is a noisy, busy place no matter how much money you've got or how many stories you live above the street. For example, my last apartment in New York City was directly across the street from the Ground Zero construction site. So even though I had a beautiful room with great light to meditate in, I still heard those bulldozers and cranes every time I sat down to meditate. I'll talk more about how to deal with physical distractions while you meditate later on. But for now, I just want to share a few tips on how to find a good place to meditate if you feel like you don't have one. Because after spending almost 15 years meditating in New York City and sharing my experiences with other meditators, I've heard of people finding all sorts of inventive places to meditate. One solution I've heard people come up with is meditating in a stairwell, which is a great option for people who might want to meditate at work. That might sound a little crazy to you at first, but stairwells don't get a lot of use during the day, and as a result, are usually pretty quiet. Unless the building you work in doesn't have an elevator, the biggest distraction you might encounter is a coworker trying to sneak in a quick cigarette. If there's enough room, I'd suggest bringing a folding chair into the hallway and sitting on that. If there isn't enough space, just keep an old pillow at your desk and sit on it in one of the landings. You might get a funny look from one of the smokers, but it will be more than worth it once you see how much more focused and rested you are every day at work. Another good option is your car. While cars don't shut out every sound, they actually do cut down on a lot of noise. I have a friend who every day at work goes out to his car and spends the first 20 minutes of his lunch hour meditating. He even puts on a pair of sunglasses so that if his boss happens to walk by, he won't think he's trying to sleep off a hangover. He says that after a few minutes, whatever street noise he might hear begins to drift away, and he's usually able to get a very rewarding session in every day. This also seems like a great solution for people who want to meditate at home, but find that their kids, dogs, cats, or maybe even spouses don't seem capable of leaving them alone for 20 minutes. If that's your situation, head out to the driveway, sit down in your car, and catch your 20 minutes there. And if your kids or spouse still find a way to bother you out there, then just drive around the block and park. They'll learn that they can live without you for 20 minutes. If leaving your house seems like too much of a hassle, then try meditating in your bathroom. When I included that tip in my book, Do You, I wasn't sure how people were going to take it. After all, the idea of sitting down on your toilet and repeating a mantra for 20 minutes might not be for everyone. But after the book came out, I was shocked by how many people told me that they had tried it and found it to be very effective. I even had one guy tell me that he had been trying to meditate for years, but can never find a spot where he felt comfortable. But after reading Do You, he went into his bathroom, put a pillow on the toilet lid and another one behind his back, and had a very relaxing session. He's meditated every day since then. Not always in his bathroom, but he told me that knowing he could always find a place in his apartment to meditate was the breakthrough that he needed to finally embrace the practice. Chapter 6. God doesn't want me meditating. We've been talking about the barriers people build between themselves and meditation, But now, I want to address one of the barriers that society tries to erect, which is the falsehood that meditation somehow conflicts with religion, especially Christianity. Nothing could be further from the truth. No matter what you might have heard, the practice of meditation is not a religion, nor is it a philosophy. It is simply a technique to help you access the stillness inside of you, a technique, as I'll demonstrate in the next section, that is irrefutably rooted in neuroscience. So if you don't think there's anything ungodly about seeing a neurosurgeon, then you shouldn't think that there's anything ungodly about practicing meditation either. Having said that, I do believe that meditation is an excellent way to build up and strengthen your relationship with God. As the Christian saint Padre Pio put it, through the study of books one seeks God, by meditation one finds him. Indeed, every major religion teaches that good things arise from stillness. In Christianity, this state is called Christ consciousness. In Islam, this state is referred to as taqwa, or God consciousness. The yogis call it living in samadhi. In Buddhism, it's known as nirvana. The Jews call it contemplation that can lead to vivekas, or clinging to God. All the great prophets taught that you will find a sense of peace and purpose in stillness. It's the basic truth that connects all these different prophets who lived in different countries and walked the earth at different times during history. They all wanted you to be able to find peace within yourself. Whether it was Buddha, Jesus Christ, or Muhammad, none of those prophets ever said that there was anything even remotely blasphemous about being still. Which is why I can't understand why the idea of sitting in stillness would feel threatening to anyone. The aim of any religion or religious leader should be to bring you closer to God, and there is no doubt that meditation does exactly that. Let me keep it real with you right now. The only reason anyone could view meditation as a threat is because they are afraid of people making decisions from their heart and out of compassion. If you run a religious organization and you tell your congregation that meditation is blasphemous, then I have to assume you are threatened by the idea of their operating from their highest selves. Maybe you don't want your flock to realize that the concepts of sexuality, race, and politics are nothing more than man-made distractions. Maybe you don't want them waking up and realizing that they don't want to take part in the abuse of animals anymore. Just as there must be something threatening to you about the idea of people looking for peaceful and compassionate resolutions instead of going to the war over those distractions. Think about that. What so-called religious authority could in any way be against a tool that can literally help build world peace? That's why anyone who suggests that God doesn't want people to meditate is a fraud who is lying to humanity. Those are strong words, but I believe that when the stakes are this high, to paraphrase the late great Biggie Smalls, I can't, quote, bite my tongue for no one, end quote. One of the reasons I feel the stakes are so high is that more and more of this religious stigma is being used to keep meditation from two groups who could really benefit from it: young people and prisoners. Let's talk about young people first. I've been very fortunate to work with the director, David Lynch's foundation, which has put a tremendous amount of time and money into bringing meditation into schools around the country. In particular, they tried to help schools who had a lot of students come from disadvantaged and dysfunctional backgrounds. One of those schools is the New Village Charter High School in Los Angeles, where Principal Javier Guzman has testified that out of all the measures they've introduced into the school to try to empower those kids, none has been as effective as meditation. Principal Guzman says that it was only through introducing meditation into his school that he was able to provide his students with a tool that taught them how to look past the test, numbers, and percentages, and begin to realize their potential as individuals. As one of Principal Guzman's students, a teenage mother told him, "Quiet time opened a door to someone I never knew I could be." Another educator the David Lynch Foundation has worked with is Carlos A. Garcia, the former superintendent of the San Francisco School District. Mr. Garcia said he caught a lot of flack for introducing quiet time into that city's troubled public schools. But he said that there was no way he could pull back on the program. We teach children about everything but themselves. he said at a symposium for the David Lynch Foundation that I also have the privilege of speaking at. This is the only quiet time in their lives. Meditation is transforming lives, neighborhoods, and it will transform our society. Yet despite the impact meditation is having on these schools, educators like Principal Guzman and Superintendent Garcia are meeting resistance because there are still those in the community who feel meditation will somehow conflict with Christian principles. Thankfully, many schools have figured out a way to get around that issue by relabeling meditation. Instead of saying that the kids need to spend 15 minutes in meditation every day, they say they're spending it in quiet time. If that's going to shut some of these critics up, so be it. Personally, I don't care what they call it, as long as those kids are receiving this tool that is going to allow them to access the stillness inside of them. We're also running up against similar prejudices in the prison system. Recently, William E. Donaldson Correctional Facility in Alabama started a wonderful program in which prisoners were taught meditation as a way to cope with the stress and depression of being locked up. Stress that often erupts in terrible violence. William E. Donaldson was a corrections officer who was tragically killed at that prison back in 1990. In the program, prisoners were taught a form of meditation called Vipassana, in which they focused on their breath. Prisoners in the program would wake up at 4 a.m. and meditate on and off until 9 a.m., during which time they reflected on their lives and what they did to end up in prison. In a story that NPR did on the program, Johnny Mack Young, a 61-year-old convicted murderer, said meditation allowed him, for the first time in his life, to really reflect on how he'd wound up going down the wrong path. In his case, he said he realized he'd never really confronted having been involved in the accidental death of his baby sister as a child. That's one of the things that tortures me, Young said. We learn this stuff. We learn it too late in life. Young wasn't alone in reaping real benefits from meditation. The prison reported that inmates who participated in the program had a 20% reduction in disciplinary action after they learned to meditate. But despite all that success, the prison was forced to cancel the program after chaplains in the state's prison system complained that it might not be, quote, in keeping with Christian values, end quote. Thankfully, in this case, the prison warden fought to bring the program back because he'd seen how much good it had done. But that perception that meditation isn't in keeping with Christian values is still out there. Whether it's in schools or in prisons, there is still too many folks who are irrationally afraid of meditation. I don't get depressed about it much, but I will admit, I get sad thinking about how despite all the good we know that meditation does, we still face impediments in our society. The fact is, we owe the students in these overcrowded schools this quiet time. We owe their teachers too. How could we not share something so simple and free that we know brings grades up and takes violence down, that literally saves young people's lives? How can we deny them that? You might not think we owe convicted murderers the right to meditate. We certainly owe it to the guards who work with them, the guards who often pay the ultimate price for all that suppressed rage and depression. It's not a popular view, but I feel we definitely owe it to the millions of people who have been needlessly locked up on drug offenses, people who for the most part only messed with drugs in the first place because they couldn't quiet the noise in their minds. Imagine how many of them could kick drugs for good if we taught them this method of quieting that noise and finding the serenity that they've been looking for in a bottle or a bag of crack. If we were really serious about ending the revolving door prison system that the war on drugs has created, there wouldn't be a better place to start than meditation. I don't want to make it seem like I'm the only one, like I'm only beating up on Christians or any other religious groups either. That's because even outside of religious groups, there's still a perception that only weirdos or hippies practice meditation, that somehow it's not a practice for normal folks. So to anyone reading this who might still feel the influence of that perception, I urge you to open up your heart and mind to the concept of meditation. Experience it for yourself before you make any sort of judgment about it. I'm glad I didn't allow that perception to cloud my lenses. On the surface, meditation would seem alien to an African American who grew up Christian in Hollis, Queens, but I found that it comes effortlessly to me, like it's part of my DNA. Certainly easier than learning how to drive a car after learning after living in New York City for my whole life. And no matter what neighborhood or city or country you come from, you'll have a similar reaction. As David Lynch says, people think meditation is weird now because in the future, the weird people are going to be the ones that don't meditate. Repeating that once more. People think meditation is weird now, but in the future, the weird people are going to be the ones that don't meditate. I want us to reach that future faster. One of the primary reasons I'm writing this guide is because I want to help propel meditation into the mainstream where it belongs. It's really very similar to the type of service I've tried to provide throughout my career. Helping guide ideas or movements that are being unfairly ignored out of the underground and into the light, where everyone can appreciate them. I was able to serve in that role with my rap music, hip-hop fashion, and spoken word poetry, and I hope to be able to serve meditation in a similar role. Because despite the incredible impact hip-hop has had in America, and I believe it's done nothing short of transforming race relations, not only in this country, but around the world, I believe that meditation can have an even greater impact. I'll even go as far as to say that I believe that meditation can help bring about world peace. That's a bold statement, but I know it to be true. And remember, I'm not your typical hippie. I've seen dysfunction in both rich and poor people firsthand, and I'm very aware of what people can be like when they're operating from their lower levels. But I also know that if we can collectively settle our minds and bodies through meditation, then we can collectively raise our minds and bodies to their highest possibilities. Maybe that sounds weird, or naive, or even blasphemous. But to me, that higher state is actually our natural one as humans. So the question becomes not whether or not that world can exist, but rather, how can we speed up the process by which we bring it about? And the answer, no matter whether you're Christian, Jew, Hindu, or atheist, is through meditation. Chapter 7, whether you like it or not. A final thought on overcoming whatever barriers you feel are preventing you from meditating. You are already moving towards stillness, whether you like it or not. I don't say that as a threat or as a warning, but rather as an observation on the basic nature of human evolution. As we grow older, we start to see the world more clearly. We become more aware of how distracted we've been, of how we've often failed to appreciate all the beauty and wonder around us. How many people, as they near the end of their lives, do you think look back and say, you know, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. Or, if I could do it all over again, I'd have spent more time on my couch watching TV and less time going out into the world and exploring. Not too many. Do you think that when a rich guy is on his deathbed, he sighs and says, wow, if only I could drive my sports car one last time? Or, if I could just get out of this bed, I'd go put on all my gold watches. Of course not. He might wish he could go back in time and push his daughter on a swing again, or have his son on his lap while he reads him a book one last time. But the material stuff, no matter how much he accumulated, won't be on his mind. No. When it is time to get put in that box, most of us have finally realized that a happy, contented life isn't one spent focused on building wealth or collecting toys. Instead, we finally see that true happiness lies in being compassionate and appreciating the world rather than being cold-hearted and greedy. We realize that our favorite moments were those spent simply with the world, with the people we loved. The moments we spent walking on the beach on a beautiful day, hearing the waves and feeling the sun on our faces, or simply sitting with our friends and laughing at a good joke. In short, we all eventually come to understand that our happiness is derived from being present in the moment, in seeing the miracles that are constantly unfolding around us every second, instead of blindly running past them. All I'm really asking you in this book is, why not speed up that process? Why not get there sooner rather than later? Why not start enjoying and deriving happiness from the world every day, instead of only in brief flashes? So, if you've been holding on to any of these misconceptions about meditation, that you don't have time, that it's too hard, and you can't do it right, that you don't have anywhere to do it, or that it's ungodly. Please let go of all of those fears right now. Because if you're afraid of any of those things, what you're really saying is that you're afraid of your own mind, which might not be such a crazy thing to feel. Our minds, especially when we don't maintain them, can be a pretty scary place. When you let years, even decades, worth of fear, prejudice, disappointment, rejection, anger, and heartbreak pile up in there, it's no wonder you don't want to start poking around too much. But the bottom line is, your mind isn't going anywhere. You're going to have to live in there, not only every day, but also every second of every day. And unlike a house or even a computer's hard drive, there is no limit to the amount of junk you can pile up. You can keep tossing anxiety and distractions in there until the day you die. But why live like that? Instead of creeping around afraid of the dark in your own mind, use meditation to help pull back the drapes, open up the windows, and let some light in for once. And once all that light begins to pour in and that fresh air begins to circulate, you're going to feel great. You're going to see that for all the anxiety you put yourself through, there was really nothing to be afraid of all along. Because despite whatever you've been through, or whatever you've thought over the years, your mind is a fundamentally good place. Your mind, once all the junk gets cleared out, only has happy and contented thoughts in it. Remember, there are no barriers preventing you from reacquainting yourself with that mind. It's the distractions that are making you anxious, not what's in your heart and in your mind. Let those fears go and claim the happiness that's always been inside of you. That is your birthright.